This is Mac OS Ken.
Mincing words and missing evidence, Brazil stands by its App Store 90-day deadline, and taste and tastelessness in Apple Maps. It is Thursday, the 15th of May, 2025. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Insta360's new X5. Get an invisible selfie stick when you buy an X5 standard bundle at store.insta360.com with code MacOSCan. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSCan. Can we just talk some more? Or again, maybe? See, I'm still trying to wrestle with a few things, and I want to see if we can pin them down. We know that Apple rushed the production of iPhones from India and China ahead of the Trump administration's seemingly haphazard tariff implementation over the past few months. I'm curious why Tim Cook thinks consumers didn't do the same. Rush purchases before prices on the devices might have gone up. More talk of increased iPhone procurement by Apple last quarter. This in a release from market tracker Counterpoint Research. Quoting that, ahead of the Trump administration announcing a raft of tariffs on the 2nd of April, smartphone shipments surged 30% year-on-year in March, as OEMs across the board raced to bring inventory into the country to beat these tariffs. Shipment volumes increased across the major smartphone exporting countries like China, India, and Vietnam. This increased U.S. inventories by 51% year-on-year for March, according to Counterpoint's U.S. smartphone inventory tracker. Now, consumers could be forgiven for jumping the gun since there was nothing like clarity as to what was going to happen. While reports indicated that Apple was buying ahead, Apple never indicated that. Meanwhile, tariffs on imports were all over the map. 10% across the board, 25% reciprocal tariffs on some, 145% on China. Wait, what are we down to now? 30%? I know somebody who bought an iPhone in November or December of last year after the election because they felt uncertainty about how much the next round of iPhones, or even the current round of iPhones, might cost with President Tariff back in the Oval. Of course, we know now that Apple bought ahead. As one Counterpoint analyst points out, the increase in shipments in March and early April will help insulate Apple from potential immediate pricing impacts in the U.S. through mid to late summer. Should the tariff situation remain unresolved with China by the time the iPhone 17 ships, we expect India to become the primary provider for US-bound iPhone 17 devices. Of course, there will still almost definitely be tariffs, which could still mean an increase for iPhone prices. We're not going to know until we do. On Apple's March quarter earnings call, Apple CEO Tim Cook was asked whether U.S. strength for iPhone in the quarter was the result of consumers accelerating hardware purchases to get ahead of any potential pricing increases. Mr. Cook responded, "If you look at the March quarter, we don't believe that we saw obvious evidence of a significant pull forward in demand in the March quarter due to tariffs." Now, I had trouble swallowing that response when uttered by Cook during the call, partly because of reports of an uptick in iPhone sales. Thing is, those reports actually came in the first week of April, just after the March quarter. So I've reached out to people I know who work for Apple retail, and they tell me that people were definitely aware back in March. One can't remember for certain whether sales increased at their store, though they do remember lots of questions from consumers about whether prices were going to go up. They also remember one friend pulling the trigger on an iPhone 16 Pro in March over tariff concerns. Another tells me, anecdotally, yeah, people were buying iPhones in March over concerns that tariffs were going to drive up prices. Now, what got me thinking about all of this again was a comment from Philip Elmer DeWitt over at Apple 3.0. Funny, he said, that Tim Cook didn't see any evidence of pre-tariff panic buying, but Counterpoint did. Not totally spot on, since Counterpoint was talking about sell-in, iPhones Apple bought to have on hand, not sell-through, iPhones that ended up going home with consumers. But if it did happen, why did Tim Cook not see it? Back at the time of the March quarter call, I thought he might be spinning positive for investors. No, people aren't buying out of fear, might be the message. They're buying because they love iPhone. After the piece from the Wall Street Journal we talked about earlier this week, though, the one that has Apple reportedly trying to figure out how to raise iPhone prices without pinning any increase on tariffs, started to wonder whether Cook's answer on the call could have been running interference for the White House. We know, because it has said so, that the administration would view a company saying prices are going up because of tariffs as a hostile act against the administration. In that light, was Cook worried about his answer? Worried that saying, oh yeah, people were buying because they're freaked out about tariffs? Was he worried that that answer would be viewed unfavorably? I've told friends for years that macOS Ken has been one long, sometimes amusing, exercise in critical thinking. We now live in a time, and I hate to say it, in a country where a lot of people are afraid to say what's true. Not a fan of where that leaves us. Brazilian antitrust regulators are down with Apple having to open the App Store to competitors in under 3 months. Not surprising, really, it was their idea in the first place. In November of last year, Brazilian antitrust regulator CADE deemed Apple's anti-steering rules for the App Store and its developers to be illegal. Apple appealed that proclamation and lost. In early March, a Brazilian court gave the Cupertino company 90 days to open up the iOS ecosystem to third-party apps in Brazil, just like the company did in the European Union. In mid-March, another Brazilian court reversed that decision. Then just last week, yet another Brazilian court reversed that reversal. Expectations were that Apple would appeal. Then yesterday, a piece from 9to5Mac said CADE voted unanimously to maintain last week's ruling, blocking Apple's blocking maneuvers. It's unclear whether the latest from CADE was in response to an Apple appeal or simply a required step in regulatory proceedings. Whatever the case, 9to5Mac says yesterday's decision restarts, yet again, the clock on the compliance deadline to 90 days. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Insta360, and their new 360-degree camera, X5. Checking out some of the X5 features, 2 in particular are really impressive. First, there's flow state stabilization. That removes shakes and bumps to keep your footage silky smooth. Then there's the hardware-software combo that lets you shoot 360-degree video, then choose the best angles later with reframing tools in the Insta360 app. It's like a multicam setup in one device. No extra gear, no extra cameras, no retakes, and no missed moments. And all of it as smooth as can be. All of that, plus improved low-light shooting, improved audio capture, 3-hour battery life, and a range of accessories to take your shots even further. Head to store.insta360.com to see what they have and use code MacOSKen for a free 45-inch invisible selfie stick with your X5 standard bundle purchase. The pole disappears from 360 footage, leaving people to wonder how you get the shots you got. It's a $24.99 value, but it's free for the first 30 people who go to store.insta360.com and buy an X5 standard bundle with code MacOSKen. Shoot every angle at once. Get your free invisible selfie stick when you buy an X5 standard bundle with code MacOSKen at store.insta360.com. Sounds like Apple and Epic Games are having a normal one. A piece from Mac Rumors says the latter has resubmitted Fortnite for review to the US App Store after 5 whole days of hearing nothing from Cupertino. The resubmission may not have been done in a fit of pique. Mac Rumors has Tim Sweeney, CEO of Epic Games, indicating that Epic Games needs to release a weekly Fortnite update with new content on Friday, and platforms need to be updated simultaneously. The company pulled the prior version and submitted a new version with the update for review. Gosh, that sounds like an easy way for Apple to keep Fortnite out of the App Store, doesn't it? Every time we went to review it, Your Honor. Of course, as Mac Rumors and others have pointed out, Apple is not required to let Fortnite back into the App Store. Wouldn't be a great look to keep it out, but Apple's not always worried about how things look. And finally today, news of a couple of updates for Apple Maps, one for people with taste, and one that leaves a bad taste. The Cupertino company issued a pair of Maps-centric press releases on Wednesday. The first has the service bringing insights, ratings, and reviews from expert sources to Apple Maps. Available now, users in the US can view and search for Michelin-starred, Green Star, and Bib Gourmand restaurants, along with Michelin Key hotels. Apple says support for additional regions is coming in the future. Wait a second, the future? That's where I'm gonna live. While Michelin is the most prestigious name in the food game, it is not the only one, and it's not the only one headed to Apple Maps. Soon, the release says, rankings and insights from restaurant recommendation service The Infatuation will be added to Apple Maps. The service will also add info from Golf Digest, with more expert sources to follow. Though only one of the named partners has already been folded into Apple Maps, the release does point users to curated guides that are already available from all three: Michelin Guide, The Infatuation, and Golf Digest. The other press release is pretty cool, right up until it isn't. I'm a sucker for the detailed city experiences in Apple Maps. Those are the things where Apple Maps will hit a major metro or a point of interest and really do a number, making 3D representations of streets, buildings, and points of interest. Kind of makes you feel like a kaiju. Anyway, it does me. Apple Maps sometimes does these ahead of big events, like last spring when they updated a lot of features for Paris ahead of the 2024 Olympics. So, the Formula One Grand Prix de Monaco is coming up, 23rd of May through the 25th, and Apple Maps is doing its thing. According to the release, the new detailed city experience features custom-designed 3D Monegasque landmarks of iconic locations, including Casino de Montecarlo, Fairmont Montecarlo, Hôtel de Paris Montecarlo, Yacht Club de Monaco, and the F1 Paddock Club. Dark mode gives users an evening view of Monaco in a moonlit glow that activates at dusk. Now, to Apple's credit, the company does say that the update is part of the lead-up to Grand Prix de Monaco 2025 and in advance of the Apple original films F1. But if you zoom around the detailed city experience for Monte Carlo, there are billboards for the movie in Apple Maps. Gauche. macOS Ken, brought to you by me, and sponsored by Insta360's new X5. Get an invisible selfie stick when you buy an X5 standard bundle at store.insta360.com with code MacOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. advertising handle by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can find me on Mastodon, macOS Ken at mastodon.social. You can also send me an email, info@macosken.com. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.